I'm just going to try reading a little bit today. And I don't really feel like being on camera right now. I joined a 12-step Codependents Anonymous group, and they're reading this book in the group. They read one step every month. So like for the month of June, they're on step number 6, and I feel like I got a lot of reading to catch up on. So I'd like to try to read a little bit of this every night. Not necessarily this every night. I've also got this Codependent Anonymous handout, and there's also other things that I'd like to read and learn from. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm just kind of going along with this idea right now. And this is called Codependents Guide to the 12 Steps, and it's by Melody Beattie. If you don't know who she is, look her up. Her book, Codependent No More, is incredible. So the first parts of this book are the title page. There's a dedication. I'll read that right now. This book is dedicated to the people working the 12 steps and to the higher power that helps us do that. There's also a little paragraph here that says what Codependents Anonymous is. The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions are reprinted and adapted with permissions of Alcoholics Anonymous World Services, Incorporated. Permission to reprint and adapt the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions does not mean that AA has reviewed or approved the contents of this publication, nor that AA agrees with the views expressed herein. AA is a program of recovery from alcoholism. Use the 12 Steps and the 12 Traditions in connection with programs that are patterned after AA, but that address other problems. Does not imply otherwise. But that address other problems. Other not imply otherwise. So I guess that's not exactly telling you what codependents are. That's a blurb about Alcoholics Anonymous. All right, the first section we're going to read here is the Acknowledgements. And sorry you're not looking at my face tonight, but that's just the way it is, especially for the first parts. I'm going to build up my confidence with this. Acknowledgements. For their contribution to this book, I acknowledge and thank the many recovering people who openly and willingly talked about their experiences with the 12 Steps and codependency. They made it possible for this book to be representative of the group consciousness. I also acknowledge and thank the 12 Steps groups who cooperated in providing the information we needed for an accurate directory. Beatrice Piper, my research assistant and on-staff freelance writer, B, diligently conducted the interviews and recovering people and compiled the directory of 12-step programs and the book reviews. Her efforts, contributions, and encouragement were vital to this book. Jonathan and Wendy Lazier of the Lazier Agency, whose professional and personal contributions were invaluable from beginning to end of this project. Anne Poe, whose editorial contributions were efficient, helpful, timely, and delivered with speed and grace under pressure. My children, Shane and Nicole. Shane makes me laugh, accepts me when I'm busy, and welcomes me when I'm not. Nicole is my inspiration and a gift. and my mother, who brought me my first word processor years ago and told me to get to work. Next, I'll just go over a quick summary of the contents. There's steps 1 through 12 that take up the first 190 pages or so, 200 pages, we'll just say. And then on page 205, there's working a program. And then on page 221, we've got glossary of recovery terms, guide to the 12-step groups, recovery book list, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps of Codependents Anonymous, the 12 traditions of Codependents Anonymous, the 12 steps of Al-Anon, and the 12 traditions of Al-Anon. All right, and this looks like a poem. Again, remember, we're just reading the first parts here. Out there, you'll see it all. The floating ends will meet and mend, and you will be yourself, your fully formed, though always changing, self of selves. Every clumsy backward look will pay for itself. Every tear you've cried or wanted to cry will set your broken bones. The rips in your heart will no longer need to be guarded by still girders, banyan trees, or even rice paper. Not so much as a dragonfly's wing will you need to cover the bludgeon place to protect the private you love so much and hope to save intact from what seemed years of relentless pummeling. Go and live and love in peace, my friend, for surely there is love to enfold you and life to feast upon. Your portion is boundless. Love will be the more you've wanted. You will know it when you see it. You will love yourself as no lover has ever had the courage to love. And the warmth you've wanted will line your pillowcases, dance upon your windowsill, and hide to the ends of your socks, awaiting your toes. And that's a poem by Deborah Mears there. All right, and then the last thing we're going to read tonight is Introduction. It goes to page 5, and when I'm done with this introduction, we'll be done for the night, and that will be the first parts of this book. There's a little quote up here in the corner, and it says, "The 12 steps are the biggest healing gift to the 20th century. Terry N." Introduction. The first time I was exposed to the 12 steps, I was forced into a state hospital to recover from a chemical addiction. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to get sober, but I had to stay in treatment to avoid legal problems. As part of a treatment agenda, I had to attend a peculiar session in the hospital auditorium. Twice weekly, people from the community came in, walked on stage, and talked about themselves. They said how awful life used to be when they were drinking, what had happened, and how good life was now. They had gone from trouble and pain to living happily ever after. I sat in the back row as far away from these people as possible. One day, a man said something that hit me right in the solar plexus. He was no longer talking about himself. He was talking about me. My pain, my struggles, the fears I had hidden even from myself. Something changed despite my agenda. I got sober. 7 years and several relationships with alcoholics later, I knew I needed something more than sobriety. I wasn't on my way to living happily ever after. I was on my way to codependency recovery. I found myself again facing these 12 steps, this time from a different point of view. This time, I was being affected by another person's alcoholism. Before long, I learned the truth. It wasn't about the other person. It was about me and my codependency issues, which I now believe were present from age 4. I wasn't happy to be facing these steps again. I didn't like being in so much pain that I needed another recovery. I thought one big problem was all one person should have to face in one lifetime. But I'm grateful now. The first time I was exposed to these steps, they gave me sobriety. The second time I was exposed to them, they gave me a self and a life. They gave me recovery from codependency. This is a book about the 12 steps and how these principles can be applied to codependency recovery, regardless of which 12-step group you now regularly attend. Many of us have looked for magic. We've paid, waited, prayed, searched, longed, and hoped for the key that would unlock the mystery of recovery in our life. We've looked for that person, place, or thing that would make us feel better, that would stop our pain and change us. How many times have we attended a seminar, bought a book, or gone to a therapist hoping to be transformed? Those activities help. They're valid tools on this journey. But there's more. I regularly receive letters from people asking when I'm going to lead a seminar or asking if the person could consult with me. If I could just talk with you, then I'd get better. You hold the key, the magic to my recovery. I know the feeling well because I've had it about others. If only I could stand in the presence of Ernie Larson or Ann Wilson Shaif, I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry, or any other teachers long enough, then I'd be changed, I'd be transformed. We know that's not true. We each have our own key, our own magic. We each have the power and the ability to discover the magic and tap into our own healing process, regardless of our present circumstances. The way to do that is by working the 12 steps. These are the basic principles of recovery from our codependency. By working these steps, we will be led at the right time to the people, seminars, helping professionals, and books that we need. But the steps are the core of transformation. They are the paths to recovery. That's why I'm writing a book about them. Many 12-step groups related to codependency recovery have sprung up across the nation. Many of these groups are inundated with new members and have a shortage of old-timers. People with practical experience working the steps. Sometimes group members practice in a group what they are there to recover from. Caretaker, shame, controlling, obsessing, victimization, and neglect of self-responsibility. For lack of knowing what else to do, many find themselves sitting in a group focusing on the problem instead of the solution, the steps. This is my gift to those of you recovering from codependency. While the multitude of the codependency group travels from infancy into coming of age, it is also a gift to myself. Writing this book has renewed and refreshed my belief in these steps and their ability to facilitate recovery in anyone's life, including my own. To write this book, I've interviewed many people attending a variety of groups, from Codependents Anonymous to Al-Anon, for those affected by a loved one's drinking, to Families Anonymous, people concerned about chemical or behavioral problems in a loved one, usually a child, and COSA, Codependents of Sex Addicts, and more. I've talked to people recovering from multiple addictions, combinations such as eating disorder, chemical dependency, and codependency. I've talked to people recovering from incest or abuse issues and codependency. I've talked to people who consider themselves just codependent. I've talked to people from the straight and gay communities. I've talked to people from all parts of the country in a variety of dialects, and learning to stop asking, "How can I help you?" and start asking, "How can I help myself?" The common denominator of people I've talked to is that regardless of the 12-step group they attended, they reconsidered codependency an important recovery issue and were willing to talk about how the 12 steps applied to codependency issues. The people interviewed were not talking to me on behalf of any particular group. This book is not endorsed, sponsored by, or affiliated with any other 12-step group. It does not represent the opinions of any 12-step group. It is not written to promote a 12-step group. It is written to spark and trigger trigger individual thinking about how these steps can facilitate healing from codependency. Then you can show others how these principles are working for you. That's called recovery. The anonymity of people interviewed has been protected. Included in this book is a list of 12-step programs that people are using to recover from codependency and related issues. You will also find a list of books that people have found helpful at different times in their recovery. Some of these are recovery books, others are treasures, little gifts that have helped along the way. It is a list of classics and the favorites. You can use this book any way you choose. It is not intended to be read cover to cover. You can dive in any chapter or step that feels right for you. This is not the book on the steps. As with my other writings, it is my personal and prejudiced opinion. At the end of each chapter, I have included suggested activities to trigger thinking about how each step might apply to your life. You can read the questions and think about your answers, or you may want to write your answers in a journal or notebook. To help clarify your thinking and facilitate your recovery, you may want to discuss your answers with a trusted friend. It is with the greatest respect that I write about these 12 steps. Originally designed from recovery from alcoholism, in this book I've tried to capture how these steps work for recovering from codependency issues too. Yet writing about these steps is a weak reflection of what these steps are and what they can do. The magic, the mystery, the power of these steps can only be understood when each of us personally applies these steps to our life. That's when they reveal themselves. That's when they become more than a list of 12 suggestions. I really think that steps are freedom, said Jody. They give me clues on what freedom can really be about. They do it in a way that challenges my already existing beliefs about what freedom is, about what a human being is, and what a being spiritual is. And I need that. Just one more page. Read about what these steps have done for us, then capture their mystery and magic in your life. A note here for beginners. It can often be confusing to hear recovery jargon, such as working a step. What does it mean to work a step? Some people think about it, write about it, and work on the steps in the same way they would work on a school homework or tax return. In a disciplined, dedicated manner. Some work on the steps with their sponsor, another person, or in the program they choose as their mentor. Let me read that again. Some work the steps with their sponsor, another person in the program they choose as their mentor. Others go to meetings, listen, and let the steps sink in. Others find a course somewhere in the middle. We are each free to find our own version of what it means to work a step. I find it helpful to think about these steps before, during, and sometimes after an incident when I could normally lapse into a codependent behavior, such as controlling or not taking care of myself. I think about the steps when I'm in emotional pain, when I get stuck, and during those times I find myself running from my feelings. A natural process takes over, and many of us find ourselves instinctively working these steps during the course of our lives. We start working the steps, and soon the steps begin to work on us. Sometimes they've worked on me when I've resisted. They change us, transform us in a way that must be experienced, not intellectualized. Working the steps means making a very human effort to apply a recovery principle in our lives, and very profound behavioral, emotional, and spiritual results occur. In the following chapters, we'll look at these efforts and the results. All right, so next time I read this book, it's going to be step 1. And again, there's 12 steps. I don't know if we're going to get done with this in 12 days or 12 weeks or 12 months, but the next time I read it, we're going to work on number 1 of 12. Okay, well, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. Sorry I'm not showing my face. I just don't feel like it right now. Maybe next time, maybe not. We'll see. Talk to you later. Thanks, bye.